Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Yasoda Nandana Bhajana Ramjana Yasoda Nandana Bhajana Ramjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramu 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajakacharya Astatata Sat Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajakacharya Astatata Sat Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Anantaguri Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada. First, I want to thank everyone here for attending today's class, today's morning program. It's always a pleasure and privilege for me to share with everyone whatever I've gained from all the devotees and from Srila Prabhupada and from our acharyas. Sharing them brings me great pleasure, and you're allowing me to share them gives me even greater pleasure. So I pray that I gain or get or receive your prayers, that I may say something very useful and beneficial and helpful to everyone assembled here and everyone who may be listening on the internet. Thank you very much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So there are two verses today, and I will do just the first verse. We will all do the first verse together. After we finish that, I will just rapidly go through the second verse and then move on to the translation and purport. Yadamridhe Kauravasrishchayanam Vireshvato viragatim gateshu Rikodara vidha gadabimarsha Bhagnoru danded vitarashtra putre Yadamrite Kauravas Rishchayanam Vireshvato viragatim gateshu Rikodara vidha gadabimarsha Bhagnoru danded vitarashtra putre Yadamridhe Gauravasrishchayanam Vireshvato viragatim gateshu Rikodara vidha gadabimarsha Bhagnoru dandhed vitarashtra putre. Please speak. Ladies, please. And now I will do the verse following that, and then we'll do the word by word after that of just the first verse. You need not join in this one due to the limitations of time. Batu priyam raunir iti smapashyan Krishna Sutanam Svapatham Siram Si Upaharad Vipriyam Eva Tasya Jugupsitam Karma Vigahayanti. Okay, do the word by words now. Yada, when. Mride, in the battlefield. Kaurava, the party of Dhritarashtra. Srishchayanam, of the party of the Pandavas. Vadeshu, of the warriors. Ato, thus. Viragatim, the destination deserved by the warriors. Gateshu, being obtained. Vrikodhara, Bhima, the second Pandava. Avidha, beaten. Gada, by the club. Abhimarsha, lamenting. Bhagna, broken. Urudande, spinal cord. Dhritarashtra Putre, the son of King Dhritarashtra. So we'll go to the translation now. When the respective warriors of both camps, namely the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warriors obtained their deserved destinations, and when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down lamenting, his spine broken, being beaten by the club of Bhimasena, the son of Dronacharya, Ashvatthama, beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi, and delivered the heads as a prize to his master, Duryodhana, foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. Duryodhana, however, disapproved of the heinous act, and he was not pleased in the least. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Transcendental topics of the activities of Lord Sri Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam begin from the end of the battle at Kurukshetra, where the Lord himself spoke about himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, both the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are transcendental topics of Lord Krishna. The Gita is Krishna Katha, or topics of Krishna, because it is spoken by the Lord, and the Bhagavatam is also Krishna Katha because it is spoken about the Lord. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted everyone to be informed of both Krishna Kathas by his order. Lord Krishna Chaitanya is Krishna himself in the garb of a devotee of Krishna, and therefore the versions of both Lord Krishna and Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are identical. Lord Chaitanya desired that all who are born in India seriously understand such Krishna Kathas, and then after full realization preach the transcendental message to everyone in all parts of the world, which is what Srila Prabhupada did. He did just that. Learned the Bhagavatam, learned the Bhagavad Gita expertly, well, and then carried it here and everywhere, fulfilling the desire and mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That will bring about the desired peace and prosperity of the stricken world. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet. Jai Srila Prabhupada. So I'd like to just go over this sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, to just elaborate on some of the points that Srila Prabhupada is making here. When the respective warriors of both camps, namely the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warriors obtained their deserved destinations, and when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down, lamenting his spine broken, being beaten by the club of Bhimasena, the son of Dronacharya beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi and delivered the heads as a prize to his master, foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. So, starting from the top, when the respective warriors of both camps, namely the Kauravas and the Pandavas. So for those of you who may be new to this or to these words, or you heard the words but you really don't know what they mean, the Kauravas are referred to as the sons of King Dhritarashtra, okay? And the Pandavas are referred to as the sons of King Pandu. Kauravas comes from the root of Kuru. It's the Kuru dynasty. And the Pandavas are also Kurus because Dhritarashtra and King Pandu, they were brothers. And being brothers, they were both in the Kuru dynasty, as Vidura was also. But in order to differentiate, certainly on the battlefield, who is on whose side, those who were the sons of Dhritarashtra assumed the name Kauravas, or the Kurus, and those who were the sons of Pandus assumed the name Pandu. Okay, so the Pandavas. So even those millions of warriors who were fighting on the Pandava side, they were considered Pandavas for the purposes of the battle. In other words, we're on the Pandava side and they're on the Kaurava side. So we should keep that in mind, that Pandavas are truly and technically Kurus, but for differentiation purposes, we call them Pandavas. And we know that the Pandavas are basically the root of the Pandavas are King Yudhishthir, and then we have Bhimasena, we have Arjun, and who's the third? Who's the fourth one? A little louder, please. I'm not hearing it. Nakula and Sahadev. Yes, thank you. So, yes, so those are the 5 Pandavas, and as I said, everyone who fought on their side. So the question comes down to is, why are they fighting in the first place? Why are they on this battlefield? What is the purpose of this fight? Actually, they're cousins. Why should they be fighting? So I'll just very briefly summarize, because there isn't much time to do a whole 2-hour talk today. The reason they're fighting is basically there was Duryodhana, who is the son of King Dhritarashtra, wanted to become the king. His father was the king, but his father was what they call a temporary king. He was to be the king only as long as Yudhishthira was unqualified by age and by knowledge. And once Yudhishthira would be grown up enough, then what would happen was that Dhritarashtra was supposed to cede the kingdom to Yudhishthira because his father Pandu was the actual king. Dhritarashtra was given the king by gift. Pandu was awarded the king because Dhritarashtra, his brother, was blind and could not defend the kingdom. He couldn't protect it. He couldn't amass property. He couldn't create the type of virtue and behavior that Pandu could by moving, going, traveling here and there, which he did. And he also defeated many kingdoms that were opposed or which were against. So Pandu was the king, but at some point in time, what happened was that Pandu had committed some offense in which he was cursed. And the offense was basically he shot an arrow at 2 deer who happened to be really yogis who were assumed the position of a deer for no other purpose than they wanted to have children. and they were unable, because of their great detachment and discrimination and lack of of interest or absorption or stimulation in sense matters. What happened was that to feel sexual stimulation, they assumed the body of a deer, of an animal. So they were in the state of copulation, and what happened was that Pandu happened to be out hunting that day, and he was hiding from behind a bush, and he shot a few arrows and shot them into the male and into the female just when they were at the height of their sexual intercourse. And so what happened was that they both fell down, but then one of the deer began to speak. He spoke like a human being. He says, "Why have you done this?" And Pandu, how can a deer speak? He's a little bit surprised. So he walked over slowly, and he said, "But what is the harm? A Kshatriya can kill deer. It's part of his training to be fearless when it comes to killing." He said, "Yes, that is correct." The deer answered, the male deer answered. He says, "Yes." He said, "That's correct. But what does it say in the scripture about killing one or two deers while they're in the act of sexual intercourse?" And Pandu was silent. And he said, "What does it say?" He said that it's illegal. So therefore, he said that you committed an illegal act and you are the king. How dare you do such a thing? You know better. You're considered to be a very great king because of your knowledge of the scriptures and your practice of the scriptures. And here you are, I'm going to die, my wife is already dead, so I curse you. That the next time you attempt to have sexual intercourse with your wife, just as you have killed me, you will die. So that was the curse. Well, once King Pandu received that curse, it was his determination that he should live an ascetic life, a life of renunciation, and give the kingdom away. That he couldn't give it to Vidura, who was actually much more worthy of it than Dhritarashtra, because Vidura had been born from a Sudra or Sudrani woman. So one could not become the king if your mother was a Sudrami, lower caste. So therefore, Dhritarashtra, although he was blind, he was given the kingdom by Pandu, and he says, "Yeah, well, you take the kingdom, and I will just live an ascetic life." He wanted to be alone, but his two wives said they wouldn't be able to live without him, so he let them come, and they lived together like, you might say, brother and sister. So Dhritarashtra took the kingdom, and he took it, and the assumption is that when Yudhishthira would be grown up and old enough to be able to rule, that Dhritarashtra would give it to him, but he never did that. He loved the taste of power, and not only that, but he wanted to, when he grew older, to give it to his son Duryodhana, who is an abject rogue, a deceiver, killer, hater, envious person, the kind of person that you don't want to rule your kingdom. And that's because, as it says in the scripture, whatever a great man does, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So, therefore, to have such a king was not an ideal. And his father was not much better, because he wanted to stay king, and he failed to give the kingdom to Yudhishthira, which caused this big battle. Anyway, what happened was that the Pandavas, in spite of their not getting the kingdom in Hastinapur, what happened was that, I won't go into those details, but what happened was that it was mentioned by the counselors that the Pandavas were entitled to at least half of the kingdom. So what happened? Half was given, and they gave him a jungle. Very nice. Duryodhana and company, they kept the beautiful, opulent palace and kingdoms and all the beautiful paraphernalia of that. But the Pandavas got a jungle. Nonetheless, they were not dissuaded. They were not distressed. They were not upset. So what they did is they turned the jungle into a paradise with the help of Vishvakarma, the architect of the demigods. So all in all, they built up a beautiful kingdom. It was called Indraprastha. Indra meaning like the city of Indra. It was like Indra's city, so beautiful. So Duryodhana was very, very envious of this, that everybody was looking at this beautiful palace and this beautiful scenery and all of the things that were there, and said, and whenever Duryodhana would hear this, he just bristled with anger and hatred. So he wanted to get that kingdom in addition to his own kingdom, which he had, Hastinapur. There's Hastinapur, and then 60 miles away, by the way, is Indraprastha. It's not just a stone throw. And if you look at the map, you'll see Hastinapur measures approximately 60 miles from Indraprastha. Indraprastha is New Delhi today. Okay? So, anyway, what happened was that Duryodhana decided that he wanted to get that kingdom, and the way he would get it is that he would challenge the Pandavas to a gambling match. It was supposed to be just a simple, friendly, sporty gambling match, but no, he had much greater ulterior motives. So the Pandavas, he challenged Yudhishthira, who was the chief brother, the oldest brother, and they said, well, yeah, okay, we can do that. So Duryodhana decided he would not throw the dice. He would have his uncle Shakuni. Shakuni was a master cheater at dice. Actually, he knew the art of deceiving persons at dice. The word that is used in the actual Pandava, and I'm talking about the full Mahabharata. There are many Mahabharats now. Most of them are either abridged editions, or they're been what we call retelling editions, where material has been added by the author, or the material has been subtracted, one or the other. The only one that I know of that is very popular, which is complete, is the one by K.S. Ganguly, which was K.S. Ganguly, which was done. Every word was translated. Not only was it translated, but it was presented to several scholars, eminent scholars, who went over it word by word, and it was then published after that. What we're seeing today mostly are retellings. And by the way, if anyone is wondering right now, which one did Srila Prabhupada recommend? The answer is, and this is right out of the Veda base, Prabhupada, when I think it was Muralidhar who asked this question, because he wanted, and all the artists wanted to read it so that they can get more in-depth descriptions of the environment. So Srila Prabhupada answered, I have not read any of these Western Mahabharats, so I cannot give you a recommendation. And yet it is circulating that Prabhupada said that Srila Prabhupada said what is her name? Anybody know the name of the female who wrote the retelling of the Mahabharata? Kamala Subramani, yeah. So she's a good novelist, but don't expect to get the absolute truth there, and her purports are all Mayavad. So therefore, I wanted to make this clear, because sometimes devotees get diverted. Purna Pragya is a very good retelling. It's a cut down, abridged version, but he's actually used the Ganguly version, so that's a plus. And but some of Krishna Dharma, he used the Ganguly version, but he made up a bit of stuff at the same time that he used stuff, and he paraphrased, of course, everything that was there. So the important point is not all those points which I'm just missing, but that's more or less parenthetical. The important point is that Duryodhana enticed Yudhishthira into the gambling match, and he had his uncle, Shakuni, who, as I said, was a master cheat. Actually, it was not cheating, it was deception. In the Ganguly issue, the word that is used is that he knew how to win by deception. Now, what does deception mean? It means to make or cause someone to believe something that's not true. That's what deception. If I deceive you, I tell you my name is Jake Smith, when actually my name is Amala-bhakta, I'm deceiving you. So it's not the truth. And then you find out, and you said, hey, why didn't you tell me the truth? Well, I just want to hide my real identity. I'm being low-key on the QT. Anyway, what happened is the gambling match ensued. I'll get into a little of this detail. I thought I was going to get more into the purports today, and I will to some extent, but I think this is very important because most people do not know how Shakuni won. They all know it was all the Mahabharats, it was cheating, but they don't know the actual process, the method. So I was writing a Mahabharata retelling some years ago, and I came to that part, and I started to do some research, and there's a few people in India who researched the Mahabharata very, very thoroughly and very easy to speak to. They spoke excellent English. And I said, well, how did this Shakuni, was he able to defeat Yudhishthira pot after pot after pot? A pot means that you throw the dice, if you win or you lose, and then again the dice are thrown, and that's the second pot, or the third, or the fourth. Anybody here ever played dice? Nobody played dice? Okay, it was a common practice, and when I was quite young. So anyway, what happened was that in dice, what you do is you get two little square little blocks, and they fit in the palm of your hand, and they have numbers on them. For example, on one side it has a number 2, has a number 3, another side number 3, a number 4, number 5, number 6, like that. So in order to win at dice, or as they call it today, craps, in order to win, you had to have a certain combination. If you throw a 7, for example, a 6 and a 1, a 5 and a 2, in other words, when I say a 5 and a 2, I mean when the dice land on the table, the numbers which are facing up are the numbers that add up to those points. So anyway, what happened was that when the dice game proceeded, as we know, how many of us have read any version of the Mahabharata? Well, quite a few. Okay. So as you remember, every time Shakuni threw the dice, what were his words right after he threw them? Anybody remember? I win. Now you remember? So he'd throw them again. I win. And every time he won, Yudhishthira would then stake something of his kingdom, whether it was all the chariots, or whether the elephants, or whether it was the palaces of that. So Yudhishthira was losing and losing, and Shakuni was winning one pot after another. It never goes to the point where Shakuni throws the dice and, for example, gets a 4 or a 6 or a 7, because then he would have to throw the dice again. You win by matching the number that you first threw down, okay? Or you can win by throwing a 7 immediately, first. Or if you throw an 11, you win. Okay? By the way, I don't go to Las Vegas on the weekends. I do Sankirtan there occasionally. So, I mean, it sounds like I'm an expert on this, but I'm really not. It's just that I did play this when I was a kid. When I was in Miami Beach, I lived in a hotel there, and they used to, some of the old timers they would throw, and I would learn how to play it from them. They taught me, and had a great education. So anyway, so what happened is that Shakuni, every time he threw the dice, he would then right after say, I win. That means he threw a 7 or an 11. But did he throw a 7 or 11? That's a good question. Who can keep throwing a 7 and 11 time after time after time after time? Nobody can except Krishna. And he wasn't Krishna. So in my research, what I encountered is that it was a known art in Kandara. Kandara is where Gandhari comes from, and Shakuni, her brother, comes from Kandara, and it was a known art of how to win at dice. Now, how did they do it? It's done with a mantra, which gives a person a power. The power to cause someone else to see the number that you want him or her to see. So, in other words, if Shakuni threw an 8 or a 10 or a 6, which would not win, when Yudhishthir saw the dice, he would only see a winning number, which would be 7 or 11. That's how he could keep doing that, time after time after time. There was no playing, actually. Yudhishthir never even had the dice. Yudhishthir was simply watching his wealth disappear minute by minute by minute until finally he had nothing left. So finally everything was won. And however, there was a big protest, and King Dhritarashtra, who was sitting there, he said, no. Draupadi, she protested. She said, this is not fair. This is wrong. He's cheating. So finally Dhritarashtra said, okay, you give back, he said to Duryodhana's son, you give back all the property. So he hated to do that, but he gave it back. But after the Pandavas left with their property intact, Duryodhana appealed to his father. She said, Father, give me one more chance to win back this property, please. I mean, otherwise the kingdom is going to go to the Pandavas. If the kingdom goes to the Pandavas, we lose everything. So Dhritarashtra said, all right, give him one more time, and I'll put a condition on it so that they'll have an opportunity to win it back. So they called the Pandavas back, and Shakuni was there, and they had another dice game, and of course, Shakuni won, and the Pandavas lost another time. And the question was, Dhritarashtra said, you said you were going to give some conditions. So Duryodhana said to the Pandavas, to Yudhishthira, if you can remain for 12 years living in the jungle of the forest, number one, and number two, if on the 13th year you can live in a kingdom totally in disguise, so that no one would know who you are. If you can accomplish this, then I will give you the whole kingdom. Meanwhile, for the 13 years, I will manage the kingdom, and when you come back, I will give it back to you if you fulfill those conditions. So what happened was that 13 years went by, and they fulfilled the conditions. But Duryodhana said, no, you didn't, because this was his horrible cheating, lying, deceptive, and Bhishma was there when finally the Pandavas were discovered. Bhishma was right there, and he said, no, it's already 13 years. They didn't tell time, by the wristwatch. They told the time by the sun, where it was in a particular area, spot. They had the sundials. So what happened was that Duryodhana said, no, they did not fulfill the condition. The Pandavas said, yes. Anyway, it erupted finally into a clash, and ultimately into a war. And that's why this battle of Kurukshetra that we see here is taking place. Duryodhana would not cede the property back to the Pandavas, and therefore the Pandavas would have to win it back. And so it was a big battle. And interestingly enough, the Pandavas were outnumbered 11-7. Nonetheless, even though they were far outnumbered, they defeated and they won the battle of Kurukshetra, which is where we're picking up at this particular point where I'm reading now. As it mentions right here in the purport, right at the first sentence of the purport, transcendental topics of the activities of Lord Sri Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam begin from the end of the battle of Kurukshetra, where the Lord himself spoke about himself in the Bhagavad Gita. So it begins from the end. So Lord Krishna has not made his in the Bhagavatam. We're in the first canto, remember, the 7th chapter. And I'm sorry that I forgot to mention the exact chapter and verse at the very beginning. My apologies. We are in this canto 1, chapter 7, verse 13 and 14, for those of you who are listening, who didn't see the board. So this Krishna will make his appearance, and I don't mean his appearance day, his appearance in a few moments. Ashvatthama is going to try and kill the Pandavas with a Brahmastra. So Krishna will then first be mentioned, because he hasn't really been mentioned thus far up to now. The main point is that the most important point is that although the Pandavas were outnumbered 11-7, and they had the greatest warriors in the world on their side, they had Bhishma Dev, the Kauravas had Bhishma Dev, they had Karna, they had anyway, one of the weapons masters there. And they had Dronacharya, 4 of the greatest weapons warriors in the entire world. Nobody could compete with them. So, and the Pandavas, of course, they had, Krishna would not to fight. That was part of the deal. He would be the charioteer. So Krishna didn't fight. The fighters were basically the 5 Pandavas, plus whoever else joined in. There were a lot of good fighters, but nobody could compare to the 4 that I mentioned just a few moments ago. In the ultimate analysis, after the final battle, there were only 3 persons left on the side of the Kauravas. That was Ashvatthama, that was Kripacharya, I couldn't remember his name, Kripacharya, and the son of Dhritarashtra from his Vaish wife, not from Gandhari. So those were the only 3 left. So those 3 were left. Now, what is the cause? Why did Ashvatthama, as it's mentioned here, want to chop off the heads of the 6 sons of Devaki? They were not little babies, by the way, or even little children. They were grown men, and they were in the battle of Kurukshetra. Why did he want to kill them? We have to see his motivation and put ourselves in his position. It happens to be, Surah made a nice talk about this a few days back, is that what happened was that the battle was going very badly for the Pandavas. And Krishna said to them, if you don't kill Dronacharya, you're in really bad trouble because you're going to lose this war. So they said, well, how can we defeat Dronacharya? He says, you're going to have to do it by some hook or by crook or by some deception. So Yudhishthira said, well, I never told a lie. I don't tell lies. He said, well, then you're going to lose this war. So you're going to have to do something. So Yudhishthira was scratching his head and wondering how he could kill or get Dronacharya killed without telling a lie. How do you do it? Suddenly came up with a mastermind bit of thought. And he called Bhima saying, Bhima, come here. He said, yes, we have an elephant over there. You see him? His name is Ashvatthama. Go kill him immediately. So Bhima, boom, the elephant was down. So then Yudhishthira approached Dronacharya. He approached him. Dronacharya was there. Of course, he wasn't raising any weapons. Yudhishthira, I have something to tell you. I said, what is it? He said, your son Ashvatthama, the elephant, has been killed. He didn't hear the elephant. He just heard Ashvatthama, the elephant, was killed. Now, remember, we're on a battlefield, and there's shouting and screaming and yelling, and whoa, ha, drums beating in the background, trumpets blaring, warriors running back and forth. The rattlings of chariots are going, the neighing of horses, the trumpeting of elephants. Just hear the sound going. So he didn't hear Ashvatthama, the elephant. He didn't hear that. So that all he thought is his son was killed. So as soon as he heard that, because he was so attached to his son, he loved his son, he taught him so much, and he expected and hoped that his son would be like him. You know, fathers become very attached to sons. It's quite normal, quite natural, especially if they're taking after their father in their skills and their abilities. So the result was is that Dronacharya could not fight any further. Why could he not fight? He was completely discombobulated. He was completely in a state of shock. Now, no matter how great a warrior you are and you're in a state of shock, your hands don't move. They just hang by your sides. He sat down, he closed his eyes, and as far as he was concerned, his life was over without his son, and he was determined to enter into samadhi and just leave. So he was in a, he sat down and had his eyes closed, and part of the plan, this was the plan, that we would stop him from fighting. He would sit down in a state of shock, and then the captain of the general of the Pandava army, Drishtadyumna, he would kill him in an illegal fashion. So that's exactly what happened. He came up with this sword, came up behind him, whoosh, off with his head. So Dronacharya's head was resting there. Now, put yourself in Ashvatthama's position. You heard that your father has not been killed in fair battle, fair fight, which is the way warriors are supposed to do their killing. But he was killed like a barbarian kills, a savage kills, like behind the back, without even knowledge, without even notice that he was going to be attacked. So he became furious, he became infuriated, he became enraged, so enraged that that night, when everyone was asleep in the barracks, he quietly, clandestinely entered the barracks where Draupadi's 6 sons were sleeping. And he approached each one without any remorse, with a complete sense of vengeance. So he took his own sword, whoosh, number 1, whoosh, number 2, whoosh, number 3. I think it really happened here. So 4, 5, 6, and 6 got slaughtered. And then he gathered up the heads and put them in a basket, or he put them in a basket and carted them away to show Duryodhana, look what I did. There will be no more Pandavas because here their issues, their children have been killed. Aren't you happy? And Duryodhana, he was angry. He was upset. In spite of the fact that he was a horrible person, he was a deceitful person, an envious person, hostile person, barbaric person, still he had one little iota of ethics or morality. You don't kill people when they're asleep. We're warriors. We're fighters. Wake them up, challenge them, fight them, kill them that way, but not the way you did it. He said, well, but look what Drishtadyumna did. He killed my father. Doesn't matter. 2 wrongs don't make a right. So, therefore, Ashvatthama was very gloom-stricken that he wasn't being appreciated for his barbaric act. So that's what this, I've gone way over already, and that's what this, I try to give everyone a little bit of everyone here a background of the story, where we're at now. What's going to happen now is that Ashvatthama will now try to go one step further. He will try to kill the Pandavas themselves with a Brahmastra. And that's exactly, he doesn't even think. There's no question of conscience. There's no question of fighting, confrontation. Forget it. Just kill them. Get rid of them. They deserve to die as far as he was concerned. They're a bunch of deceivers. And Sura, he explained very clearly the whole idea as to, although Krishna advised that illegal act be done, But Krishna was doing it for the welfare of the entire kingdom. Because as I said before, if you have Duryodhana ruling the kingdom, then you have deception. When you have deception, then what happens is everyone in the kingdom becomes a deceiver. And when everyone is a deceiver, then everybody becomes suspicious of everyone else. There's no peace, there's no calm, there's no tranquility, no serenity, none at all, because everyone is in anxiety as to whether somebody is going to kill them. So this is what is about to come. And Arjuna has to counteract this Brahmastra which is about to be sent. So I think I've covered the main points. I didn't cover the subject matter which I'm most interested in, and that is to talk more about the love of God. But we're going to be, for a number of pages, we will be dealing with this battle, after battle, where there will be confrontation between Arjuna and Ashvatthama, and what is going to happen, etc., etc. So now that we have this, there's really no time for class. I'll take one question, because if I've said something to confuse anyone, or maybe I made a mistake someplace, you're all welcome to correct me if you like. I don't get upset by that. I have my buddy back there to defend me, so ask the temple president, so beware. So are there any questions on the points that I have made? I see a hand halfway up. Yeah, you can put it all the way up if you like. We can get the microphone, please, so that... Now that's for the internet listeners. They cannot hear the question unless it comes through the microphone. Thank you, Savas Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much. That was an amazing class. So I had one question where Ashwatthama, before he goes to chop off the heads of the 5 sons of the Pandavas.
6 sons, you mean?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Before that, I had read previously that some of the commentators say that Lord Shiva comes in Rudra form and meets Ashwatthama. But there is no real understanding of what he does. He just meets him, and Ashwatthama sort of bows and goes further and does his job. I was wondering about this.
You're saying the commentators. Are we talking about what's on the page of the Mahabharata?
Yes.
Or there's
yes,
speculation. I have never seen anything about what you're talking about on the page. But it may be, maybe in the appendix. It could be somewhere that you said Lord Shiva and what was your person?
No, Lord Shiva in the form of Lord Rudra. He comes and Ashwatthama sort of bows, and then he goes.
I can't understand you. Please, a little slow. Go ahead.
Okay, so in the Mahabharata, that this was before I became interested in devotion service, but I had read previously in Mahabharata by Ganguly version. He had mentioned that when Ashwatthama goes, before chopping off his head, I actually meets a figure,
Please go a little more away from the mic, because your voice is spreading out, and therefore the delineation or the definition of your voice is completely lost. So I think you're going to have to come up here. It's getting late, and I have to keep asking you over and over, and we can discuss that then. Thank you all very much for listening. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, glories to the Srimad Bhagavatam, glories to Mahabharata, and Hare Krishna. May you all have a wonderful Krishna-conscious day, constantly remembering Krishna, loving Krishna, surrendering to Krishna, and serving Krishna. Hare Krishna. I'll bring it next time. I'll make it. It's in the kitchen. Prepare it. I need 40 bags of popcorn.